Hello everybody, it's Wyvern here with another bit of Total War Warhammer 2 Quick Match gameplay. This time around, it's a bit of Brettonia against High Elves. So, definitely a little bit of a rough matchup for Brettonia, potentially. Brettonia obviously can't really outshoot the High Elves. Their cavalry's okay, but fighting for the skies can definitely be a little bit of a challenge sometimes. So, just wanted to give it a shot to this sort of mixed bit of a composition. With a very infantry-heavy, ground-based composition. Actually bringing King Louen on a parted warhorse rather than on Beaquis, the hippogriff, which is all too common, really. So for my front line, I guess I should go for lords first. For King Louen, of course, I did bring the Sword of Couronne, which is basically mandatory. Awesome melee defense and melee and armor debuff. Lion's Shield, because obviously there are quite a few magic abilities, and of course the High Elves have a lot of missiles usually, so I figured this would be very useful. Stand your ground just to boost my troops, make them a little tankier. Foe Seeker just to, keep Louen moving. And of course, otherwise Louen does have all his fancy abilities. He has physical resistance built in, he has missile resistance, magic resistance, very high armor at 110, bronze shield, all that sort of stuff. Though actually the magic resistance is from the fact that he's standing next to the Damsel of Heavens. Which is the only here I brought. I did bring a Damsel of Heavens rather than Life, which is usually what I bring. I wanted to try out Chain Lightning. I did bring Wind Blast because I think this is the best ability, especially when overcast against heavily armored troops. And of course, my aim is to break enemy. Martial prowess if possible. And then finally, a Harmonic Convergence, just have a cheap sort of buff spell if I'm low on magic. Unfortunately, I forgot the Power Stone on her, and that is definitely going to bite me in the rear a little bit later in the game. Then we do have a Grail Relic over here, which of course is there just to provide psychological immunity and a little bit of leadership. Actually, a lot of leadership at plus 12. My front line is composed of 2 units of peasant mobs just to kind of soak up enemy arrows and soak up enemy charges. Behind that, we have a mix of 4 Battle Pilgrims and 3 Foot Squires. Of course, these guys are just there. The Foot Squires are there to chop through heavily armored infantry. The Battle Pilgrims are there to hopefully outtrade somewhat effectively with White Lions and rather effectively with spears. And generally, you will see the majority of the enemy front line when you're fighting High Elves be spears. So for that, Battle Pilgrims are really, really solid with their high melee attack and decent melee defense and good weapon strength and frenzy and all that sort of stuff. Behind that, 2 units of men-at-arms with polearms to provide a little bit of extra armor piercing. These guys are fairly cheap at only 550. They're very susceptible to arrows. I obviously didn't bring any archers because peasant bowmen would get routed off by elven archers within seconds, but I did bring 2 units of men-at-arms with polearms just to counteract enemy cavalry and maybe large flyers and that sort of stuff, and if push comes to shove, to provide some armor piercing support in the front line. Behind that, 2 units of Grail Knights, really kind of the main meat and potatoes striking force here. These guys, of course, have absolutely got buffed. They have 90 armor now. They have a crazy charge bonus of 82. They have physical resistance. They can boost their charge bonus even more by taking a lance formation. And so just a very powerful kind of a composition here, or a very powerful army. For my opponent, he did bring Techless with a good chunk of his spells. He did bring Flock of Doom. You can see Overcast Flock of Doom right away. And he's going to hit my block of troops here. It's not going to do much to the heavily armored Foot Squires, and it's going to do a lot to the peasant mob, but who cares? They're peasants. Nope. It doesn't matter. Interestingly enough, he did bring Potion of Troy. He didn't bring the Sword of Teclis though, he only brought Net of Mintok and Flock of Doom. Behind that, my opponent did bring a Mage of Life, so actually doing dual caster with only Earthblood, but he did bring actually the Starwood Staff and the Book of Hoth, which improve power recharge. You can see over here I've gotten kind of netted down, and that's definitely a bit of a problem. I'm going to get pounded on by these annoying Eagle Claw Bolt Throwers. My opponent's front line is composed of a mix of Spearmen, as it could kind of be expected, and some Swordmasters of Hoth. And you can see I've actually hit them with a Wind Blast there, and it's taken off about half their HP. They're not quite out of martial prowess just yet, but they're pretty close, and just a little bit of damage would do them in. Behind that, my opponent does have 2 units of White Lions of Craze, so in the infantry and infantry fight, he can easily dominate me. I simply don't have the armor piercing really to deal with all these high value or high armor units with crazy anti-infantry bonuses and all that sort of stuff. My opponent does cast an Earthblood over here, but Earthblood is actually, the fact that he didn't bring Regrowth is a bit of a pain here. Earthblood is not particularly great, especially not single cast like this. You only heal about 400 HP on the Swordmasters, so that's something I can easily undo with another cast of Wind Blast. Unfortunately for me, the Moondragon has actually hit my Grail Knights and whittled them down a bit. My opponent does have, of course, the Eagle Claw Bolt Thrower, just trying to force me to advance on him, and he does have a Moondragon for terror and fire damage, or, well, just damage and breath attacks and all that sort of stuff. Over here, Louen has gotten netted again. My opponent is definitely making good use of these nets, netting me back there, and netting me again here, and it's definitely making things a little rough. But I do get another Wind Blast over here on the Swordmasters of Hoeth, who have now dropped out of their who have now lost their martial prowess. And with that, I'm falling in with Foot Squires, I'm falling in with Battle Pilgrims, and I'm hoping to kind of just collapse my opponent's front rather quickly. You can see another Breath does go in, but it actually probably does more friendly fire than damage to me. Spearmen lost their martial prowess almost immediately, and you can see the damsels over there. The peasants over here, Battle Pilgrims sliding out with Spearmen. Teclis is going in trying to help. But Louen is around here, and Louen, if he gets on top of Teclis, he will kill him pretty quickly. I do try to cast Chain Lightning, hoping to annihilate these Swordmasters. A huge mistake. It wanders off immediately, and it did cost 14 Winds of Magic, especially given that I didn't bring the book Power Stone is a huge problem. It means I'm just not getting all that much. I didn't get very much value out of that at all, and it didn't even make it quite to these white lines. Now my Grail Knights over here, you can see I'm making lance formation, charging through the back of these Spearmen. Over here, they are just fighting these white lines. And they also, I do believe in spear formation and lance formation, which is pretty useful in my opinion. It's good to switch into that formation right before charging, and then switch back out of it and kind of bounce back and forth. Because of course, the speed bonus is pretty significant, or the speed debuff is significant, but the bonus to charge is also really good. Now, did pop Harmonic Convergence to try to keep these guys alive. My opponent does kind of roast some Battle Pilgrims over here and some Peasants, but nobody cares about the Peasants. And now my Grail Knights are charging in the back of these Spearmen, just trying to route them a little quicker. Over here, the Battle Pilgrims are doing pretty strong, but unfortunately I make a huge mistake and forgot these Men-at-Arms polearms. If I'd pushed them forward, I would have been able to kind of stiffen up this front line, prevent these Swordmasters of Hoeth from rampaging around. I do juggle around my Knights quite a bit. I'm trying to keep them bouncing between troops and avoid getting tied down with Swordmasters of Hoeth. These guys don't have anti-large, but they do have armor piercing. Over here, Teclis is popping the Potion of Charoi, and is retreating, trying to outrun King Louen. And it's really not working out for him. I just bypass him with the Battle Pilgrims, figuring it's not really worth chasing after him. Trying to collapse on these Swordmasters to deal with him. Over here, my poor Grail Knights have finally had enough, and they're actually routing off. My opponent's completely forgot about those troops back there. And the fight's kind of degenerated into two pockets. I've got my Grail Knights, most of my infantry, the Grail Relique, my caster, and Louen over here. Louen is going to start slugging out with the Moondragon pretty shortly. Definitely makes me wish I'd brought Bordelot in just for fighting the Moondragon, because Bordelot, of course, does not. Although he lacks regen, he does have a bonus against large. I finally remember my polearms. I'm just trying to push them into the fray, and just trying to grab peasants and pull them back in. Over here, the routed off Grail Knights are back there. I don't have any healing, which is the big problem. You can see some of my opponent's troops are routing, though. These Spearmen are routing. The Mage of Life is running over to the flank. Another Flock of Doom goes down, but with a normal cast against some pretty high armor targets like Foot Squires, it's not going to do too much. These poor Swordmasters are actually absolutely getting diced up in close quarters by the Grail Knights and all that sort of stuff. Over here, Louen is definitely taking a bit of a beating. I switch his targeting to Teclis, and Teclis is not going to have a fun time against Louen. His stats are pitiful, and without his and Teclis without his martial prowess is really, really bad at defending himself. Now I do have my Grail Knights over here. They do get hit by Flock of Doom, which is terrible against Grail Knights, because of course Grail Knights are just very tanky. And they do surround the Moondragon now, and they're going to be able to whittle it out very, very quickly, in spite of not being in lance formation. Over here on the other flank, I have thrown the Grail Knights into a rear charge against some of these spears, and just trying to kind of break my opponent down. The Battle Pilgrims will outtrade the spears very, very easily. And the polearms are actually, because of their very high melee defense, they're actually tanking pretty well against white lines. White lines don't have a bonus against infantry, and their melee attack is only 38. Plus their weapon strength while being armor piercing is also only 34. So actually, their actual ability to kill off the men-at-arms with polearms is not that great. So right now my opponent is casting a lot of Flocks of Doom. They're doing a lot of damage to me. Definitely kind of maximizing those huge amounts of Winds of Magic. Over here on the flank, I have managed to pursue the Moondragon, honestly wasting quite a bit of time here and effort chasing it down. This was completely unnecessary, but the Knights do finish it off, and I'll be able to pull these troops back over to this flank. And at this point, things are really kind of starting to fall apart. You can see over the Eagle Claw Bolt Thrower is slugging out with the Peasants, and the Peasants actually rout, which says something about how bad the Peasants are. My opponent does get another fiery convocation off over here, which roasts some peasants, but once again, they're peasants, nobody cares. I've gotten a breath spell into here, but it hasn't done very much damage, because I couldn't overcast. I no longer had the Winds of Magic for it. But with these healthy polearms in there, with Louen in there, obviously Teclis can't fight Louen 1-to-1. And ultimately, with these foot squires coming back and the battle pilgrims coming back, these guys are actually pretty healthy. Once they chase off these spearmen, they'll be able to come back and beat on these guys. And I actually have a healthy unit of Grail Knights here at 79 79 kills, 34 models. These guys could easily kind of wipe these troops out. My opponent's army does at this point just rout to army losses and a Pyrrhic victory. So I think that if you're going as high elves, a composition sort of like this one is probably the way to go. I did lose all of my Grail Knights in one unit there. Maybe perhaps more foot squires is a better idea, just because of how much armor high elves can bring. But then again, foot squires, 70 armor is a decent amount of armor, but it's important to remember that it's only going to provide a 35 to 70% damage reduction against the elven archers, and that's normal damage, and that's ignoring the armor piercing damage. And all of them do have, I do believe, like two or three armor piercing damage on each shot on each arrow. So foot squires actually go down fairly quickly to high elf archers, in spite of the fact that they have decent armor, just because they lack shields and they don't have the best armor. They only have 70 armor. But in my opinion, this build sort of like this one is kind of important. I definitely botched my men-at-arms with polearms use. I should have pushed them in much sooner, just to get that extra unit on the field. I should have gotten a Power Stone on the Damsel of Heavens instead of getting peasant mobs. I completely forgot about it, and that was a big mistake there. That would have been a big game changer. I think the Damsel of Heaven is actually not bad though, because the Wind Blast Overcast is pretty easy to land, and it does a lot of damage as long as you can line it up correctly, even to get spaghetti lined infantry. And as you saw, I took about half the HP off the Swordmasters of Hoeth. So if you need to whittle down, break some Phoenix Guard, break some Swordmasters of Hoeth, anything like that, very quickly, get rid of their martial prowess, it's just very powerful. And yeah, as you can see, the battle program has actually dished out quite a bit of hurt against the spearmen that will just out-trade them outright. I do think a bit of an interesting pick on my opponent's part was the Eagle Claw Bolt Thrower. Artillery in general is not particularly great, and my opponent spent most of the early game trying to snipe at my infantry with the Eagle Claw Bolt Thrower. No, Brettonian infantry is dirt cheap. It's completely expendable. You're not going to get much of your money's worth if you're sniping away at them. 55 troops killed, of which probably half, maybe more, was peasants. Is unfortunately, quite frankly, irrelevant in the grand scheme of things. Perhaps if my opponent had used it to snipe down my Grail Knights, it would have been a little more potent, a little more effective. Because he did use a Star Dragon or Moon Dragon to snipe down my Grail Knights a little bit. He whittled them down by about a quarter of their model count on one unit. So definitely that was very powerful. And I think that the Bolt Thrower was focusing on Grail Knights. That would have been much more useful. Nonetheless, I think it's a bit of a questionable pick. I think in general you're better off bringing fewer Spearmen, not bringing the Bolt Thrower, and bringing in Archers. Also, making sure to use the Moon Dragon. Dragons are not really great at assassinating lords unless you're really trying to goon like one big lord with multiple large targets. It's better, in my opinion, to use the Moon Dragon to kind of try to induce a terror out. If my opponent, for example, had gotten a terror out on my left flank, which didn't have the Grail Relic there, that would have been very powerful, and that would have basically decided the game then and there, I think. Nonetheless, very good game to my opponent. It was a lot of fun. Definitely, I also blew a lot of Winds of Magic on that Chain Lightning. Battle Pilgrims impressed me. Definitely great performance out of them. They're a very strong unit. And yeah, it was a lot of fun. Look at those peasants go. 4 kills, 1 kill. So strong. And yeah, getting into my opponent. I do hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, be sure to leave a like and subscribe down below for additional content. As usual, guys, if you have any comments, criticism, anything like that, any questions about Total War Warhammer 2 or Mortal Empires, anything like that, be sure to post them down in the comments and I'll respond as soon as I can. As usual, guys, I do appreciate you all for watching, and I will see you all in the next one. Wyvern out.